what is the main difference that you see in a software engineer working in a company like yours, that you are providing services to other companies when it comes to build software, and the difference in someone working in a company that it's a product that it could be, as I said before, Netflix or whatever the company, but they're focusing one specific product?
In terms of engineering in particular, if you're going to go work at a product company, a lot of the way that works is there's a defined tech stack. The problems are clear. The technical challenges are in front of you, and we know exactly what that looks like. And so hiring tends to look very specific, right? People are asking for particular technical experience. A lot of times we'll define the tech stack and put it out there in the job descriptions, and be real crisp in what things are going to look like. In the consulting space, we don't really know, in advance. We don't hire people at neither of the firms that I've been with hire people for any specific project, right? We hire people to be a part of our general pool of consultants. And so what a lot of people are hoping for when they come and do the interviewing process with us is some clarity on what's the work going to look like. And we can put a bounding box around that and say, hey, it generally looks like this, but the biggest feature for a consultant is flexibility, right? Is someone who can adapt to the changing circumstances, because that's basically what we do. I often tell people, consultants, some people like to think consultants are coming as experts in some particular thing. And I think that's a bit of a misnomer. I mean, we do have some expertises that are useful and apply in the work that we do. But I think the thing that consultants tend to be are expert learners. We ramp up very well because we do a lot of that. Maybe at the beginning of my career, when I was more junior, I was on a new project every 3 to 6 months, and there's nobody is going to give you that opportunity in a useful way if you're hopping between, companies or even inside of a single product company. It's not possible. And so consulting is very oriented around fast ramp up times. ThoughtWorks, we used to talk a lot about 3 characteristics. We would say attitude, aptitude, and integrity. Those were the things that we were trying to assess through the interview process. And we do that through the lens of programming and various other things. And so that's the bit that you see as the person, receiving the interview. But the thing that you're being assessed on are those 3 characteristics.
Do you share that with? Do you usually share that with people doing the interview in the process? That's what you are assessing.
I think we try to convey that those are more intangibles, and so we try
Of
and
course.
it can get people a little bit inside their own head. And I think the way we would I'll tell you how we express it at TXI. Maybe that's helpful. Is like we basically tell people, look, we're trying to see you at your best. Interviews are painful. There's no other way around it. Is an awful reality of our lives, and it's awkward and it's nerve-wracking. And the goal for at least TXI is to put as much of that at ease as possible. We tell you up front, we're not trying to trick you. We're not trying to catch you in a mistake or something like that. And we're not trying to see how much of the technical knowledge base you've memorized. That's not all that valuable. We all have Google, right? Matter of fact, the tools are getting better and better every day. And so what we're looking for, and I think we do say this pretty well, is we're looking for your communication skills, how you think. So we ask people a lot to think out loud, right? Like, tell us what's going on in your brain. And that, if there was one single bit of advice I would give to a person seeking to get a job, would be to practice that skill of just letting your thoughts come out of your mouth as they come, because that's really what the interviewers are looking for, is your thought process. The actual end answer, in my opinion, is not all that important.
So it's pretty clear that the main difference that you see in a software engineer working for a product and a software engineer working in consulting, it's mainly about flexibility, being an expert in learning, and being able to adapt. It's not only being flexible from willing to be flexible, but also it's being able to have the capabilities to learn and to adapt. And of course, you have to have good engineering background with best practices and so on. That's a must.
I'll add to that story. I think when we ask about technical questions, the thing that we are looking for is how much did the person ask what's behind the answer, right? Like, so if we ask you a bit about like how do arrays work, some like core basic foundational thing, there's a difference between a person who says, well, in say they were trained in like Python or something, like in Python, an array works like this. There are these functions, the yada yada yada. That's different than a person who understands sort of the core concepts of what arrays are. As an example, they're items sorted, they have order. I would expect to be able to do these types of things with that data structure. And what that indicates to me is that they will be able to adapt to a new programming language or a new library very quickly because they understand what's under the covers rather than just the tool that they use every day.
I was going to ask you about these things. How do you assess at the end of the day when you are bringing those people to the interviews? And you just gave an example. I was going to say, what would be for someone that it's going to be doing a hiring process for the first time? How would you help them understand how to build the job description? And then how would you suggest them to have what would be your guidance in how to do the interview process? Because first you have a definition of what it is that you need. And that needs to be very clear, even though you don't know in what projects they're going to work. You know that they need to be adaptable. You know that they need to learn fast, and then they need to have the foundations of software engineering. But then is the other aspect on how do you assess that in the hiring process? So that would be my question, and what would be your advice for someone doing this for the first time? Because you might know everything, but if you haven't done it before, probably you are gonna miss steps or do stuff that then doesn't work out.
I would say the first thing about sort of building up that job description, it's actually probably one of the hardest steps, because you have to be really introspective about not only what you want them to bring to the table, but really what do you bring to the table? What are you offering them in all of this? And I think a lot of people get hung up on things like, snacks in the office. I guess that's less so these days, but it's like...
It was a thing at some point in time.
Yeah. It's like, exactly. We have ping pong. I don't know. Like think deeper, right? Like think deeper than just the benefits. Think about your culture. Think about what makes your company unique, and why do you work there? Why do you love it? And make sure that comes out in the job description. So I think that's one bit. And then the second bit I'll say is we try to be very specific in our language of what kind of things we commonly do, but we try real hard to limit things that are like 7 years of experience in X, right? And the reason for that is, in particular, large groups of previously disadvantaged folks, women in tech in particular, tend to be extra critical of themselves compared to traditional cisgendered white males. And so there's some techniques to soften that language, make it clear what matters to you. And I guarantee you what matters to you is not number of years of experience. You probably have believed that is a good proxy for something else.
Yes.
And so get at what the thing you care about is, right? Like try and punch at that thing. And then, we try and develop this into like a couple of different sections that I think are really useful. So we separate things out into like, basically, what do we expect from a person in this role? Just like what are as clearly and concisely, how can we articulate the expectations of a person doing this? And maybe that involves some like descriptions of their core responsibilities and whatnot. And I think we try to get at what the attitude we're looking at is. And so we list that as who you are. Like what is this kind of what does it look like for a person to fit this? And again, like I said, try and keep away from hard numbers and things like that as best you can.
And then once you have that, because you have approached a person or because the person has applied to a job advertisement, how do you do the process of understanding if they do have what you are after?
I'll say first thing to start off with is basically for us, it's always been whatever the job title or whatever we put out, you always get like a lot of people about one tier below that because people are reaching, right? They're trying to
Yeah,
stretch into a role.
yeah.
So first off, the starter thing is expect that, you know? And in a job market like we are in today, where there's lots of people looking, you should expect a dramatic influx of resumes. Um, I think that's commonly true. And so the first part of the process is think about what a resume screen is going to look like. You need to be able to sift through a large group of people on paper and pick out the most likely candidates. It's hard. That's a that's a very difficult one. I think you have to be very judicious with that and be very realistic. Trust your gut.
I was going to ask you, do you have any technique to go through all the, like today you can have hundreds, at least hundreds of applications, and
Yeah.
the lower the seniority for the role, then you go to thousands.
Oh yeah.
So what's your technique to go through all those resumes?
We posted a position not long ago, less than 6 months ago, and in 24 hours, as a mid-level sort of like senior engineer, and within 24 hours, we got 150 resumes, and it was just like, wow, we have to really buckle down. And so I think a lot of it is we look for passion in the subjects. We look for people who are interested in being technologists, and we look for people who are well-rounded, right? We want to see things like people are engaged outside of just the thing that is right in front of them. And maybe that shows up in a way they passionately engage in their community. Maybe it shows up in how you can see in the description of the things that they did in their experience go a little bit outside of the boundaries of perhaps what was laid out in front of them by their manager. We're looking for that kind of thing. And obviously we're looking for skills that fits, right? Like we're looking for technologies that are germane to the things that we do. For example, my company we don't do any .NET work. And so we're like, it doesn't mean you couldn't have .NET experience and work here. It's just that we don't do that. And so if that's your entire resume and there's nothing else that stands out, let's move on to a different candidate. And that's okay. But if maybe you have a bunch of .NET experience and something else shines in there, and that could bring them forward too. So it's be judicious with that. Trust your gut. You don't have to call everybody. That's the deal. So I would say do that. And then as soon as possible, like recognize that you're going to start building relationships with these people. So you're going to get on a phone call, either maybe if you have a recruiter, or maybe it's the hiring manager themselves. And this is where I think the process, I guess it probably starts at the job description, but I think it has to be a two-way street. Like you have to realize that not only are you getting something out of this person, you're trying to understand where they come from and what their background and interests and stuff are, but they're trying to do the same for you. Like they want to know more about the company. And so you got to get used to telling your story and what matters in a way that feels authentic and can be a little bit tailored to that individual. It's not a bad idea to practice that a little bit.
I have seen many good professionals that they know what they do, that they know what they want, and they know what's the value. I have seen many of them rejecting offers because they didn't have a good experience in the interview process.
Absolutely.
And
I've done it.
they don't doubt. It's like, no, this is not for me, because they have a very good understanding of what they're after, what they can bring to the table, and if that place is going to work for both the company and themselves. And they just say no. And many times it has been because there was quite a poor hiring process where people couldn't get anything from the interview process. And most of the interviews, and I think this is a very common mistake, where you have different stages in the interview process, but it's mainly the same interview done by different people in the organization.
I think one of the biggest problems in the tech industry today is that there's no, and I hate using the word loyalty, but like there's no dedication to the relationship between employer and employee is very, very light, and so people jump, every year, every 2 years to the new thing, and employers treat employees that way, and I think it's awful, right? Like I want some connection here. I think it's meaningful just for us as people, as humans, and I want to radiate that to that prospective candidate. Is like, this is a process, and I say it to people directly. I'm like, this is a process that we try and make balanced. We try and make it to where we're getting a lot out of you, learning a bunch about you, but we want you to do the same. We put them in front of a bunch of different people, and the purpose of that is not to grill them and make it a horrible experience for that individual, but rather so that they can get to know a lot of the people that they might work with. We want them to want to be here, and I don't want you to take the job because you have to, and with a whole bunch of fuzzy questions still. I want you to have strong amount of clarity of what this job is, who the people you'd be working with. Do you like it? Do you fit in here? Do you feel like this is a good thing for you? And if the answer to all that is yes, I think we'll keep that person for a lot longer.
Fair enough. I wrote about this thing that my thought is, work nowadays is a product where people exchange their time for that product. And that product, what allows them to do is to have an income to live the lifestyle they want, be able to work in a place where they want, doing things they want, and so on. And usually people that know their capabilities, know what they want, they see it as a product that allows them to live the life they want. And on the other hand, you have people that they just want a job and they just want to pay the bills. And they do want to live the life they want, but they haven't discovered how, and they see a job as a job, and that's it. So, and that thing is, that mindset, I think it's more old school from the times where it's like, you go to work and that's what it is. You have no choice. Enjoy the weekends, enjoy the holidays, and that's it. But nowadays, you can't choose. And people that choose, the way I see it is that work is a product that will allow me to live the life I want. And definitely companies that they know who they want in their teams, they assess the candidates in this way. Do you want to be here? Because if you don't want to be here, I don't want you to be here. Because if not, you're not going to be performing, and it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and I mean, a slightly different take on it that comes from the way we think about ourselves is we're actually, so TXI is a 100% employee-owned business, and so literally when I hire you, I'm bringing you into a group of people who own this company, right? Like you literally become an owner by signing up. And
how it works?
That's a longer story, but it's
okay. We can talk about that another time. But it's very interesting. So everyone working in your company owns a bit of the company.
That's right. Yeah, the acronym is an ESOP, Employee Stock Ownership Program.
Yeah.
It's a formal structure for how businesses can function. And so I think a lot of that, what that also translates to is we try and push out a lot of trust in our employees, right? So we're going to say, look, you own a portion of this company. And that's true about a lot of product companies that give you RSUs or some stock. It's a little different, but it's the same concept. Is they're like, hey, we want you to feel the connection, feel the benefits of our success, and we want you to be a dynamic employee. We want you to do things differently each day because you see what the most important thing is. And I think that's the goal for me as well. Is I want to hire someone who's really bought into who we are, where we're going, and they're going to need to think on their feet about how they best impact us positively. And a person who's frankly just looking for a paycheck is not going to act like that.
Patrick, you mentioned something about it was with another company, but you built a team in South Africa,
right?
And I guess that then you kept working with that team from America, or not? I don't know. But what's your take in building teams in different countries and then working all together when you have people in South Africa, people in Chicago, people maybe in Argentina, in London?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, when I think back on it, if I were to do it all over again, I think the main thing that we tried to do, but it was harder than I expected, was growing people who were the next round of leaders. We spend a lot of effort trying to. It's not just about filling seats, right? Like when you're building an office in some other location, you need leaders, you need people who can help keep the culture alive in a place, because it all can kind of collapse quickly if you're not careful. So I think that's one big thing is in the short period of time, thinking about who's going to take over and who's going to run this thing. And then secondly, I think thinking a bunch about the future business model, right? So our business model in South Africa was to try and rely on work that came from the continent, not to be an offshore partner in that space. And so it was less. It was like a little bit more disconnected when I went back to Chicago, right? They were spinning off on their own and doing their own stuff, and that's a very different thing than if you're creating sort of like a nearshoring opportunity, like that. ThoughtWorks has a number of offices in Brazil, and they went through this interesting arc of being more of a nearshore partner to eventually taking on more Latin and South American, work that was local. Knowing where you are in that curve and where you fit in the bigger business is very important to the success of this type of stuff, and making sure that the employees that join are bought into that. They know how they fit into this bigger picture, because a company like ThoughtWorks is massive, right? It's huge, and you have to feel connected to the whole if you are going to be one particular office of many. So I think those are the core things to think about.
Makes sense. Currently, your team is working. You're a head of engineering at TXY.
TXI, yeah.
TXI. Yep. Do you guys work remotely, or do you work all at the same office?
We since the pandemic, we got rid of our office and moved to fully remote. And so we have employees certainly all over the U.S., but also quite a few in some other countries. We have one person in Brazil. We have some folks in Europe. And then we do a lot of work with other companies that are all over the world, that a lot in South America, Latin America, that kind of stuff.
Cool. For someone that it's going to be managing a team that works remotely, what would be your top 3 tips to make the communication work?
I think I've been thinking a lot about this because it's a never-ending discussion. But I think one of the ones I have right now is to have different modality for different types of conversations. So maybe we use Zoom, and to date we used to use Zoom for everything, right? Like it's always a Zoom, just pop in there, it's fine. And I think it's useful to say maybe we use Zoom for team meetings, and it's where we'll present. It's the most formal of the ways that we show up. But I would also suggest something like I'm trying to get people to use Slack huddles for quick conversations. We don't need a thing on the calendar, but we need to reduce the friction of asking a quick question. And so maybe a Slack huddle, or I don't know what it is, but there's lots of different ways you could just jump on a quick
it
thing.
Could be a Slack message, it could be a Slack call, or if it's a meeting, as you said, it's on the calendar and it's through Zoom.
Yeah. So think about that and actually talk about it. Talk about it as a team so that you can normalize certainly ways to get to have quick interactions. I think that's the hardest thing in the remote world, is just asking that one quick question that you want to have a little bit of synchronous back and forth, because everybody certainly talks a lot about we should prioritize asynchronous communications, like writing up PR comments, more thoroughly. And that helps a lot. But what I find is people are more timid to just ask a buddy a question that could help them really, really be more effective in that day. And the feedback loops are stretched out longer than is useful, especially for those who are a little bit more junior in their career. They need lots of that tight feedback. And I don't think there's any substitute for synchronous interactions.
Patrick, everything that you have said, it has been so accurately well explained that it has been, we have gone fast. But is there anything else that I haven't asked that could be beneficial for someone in the hiring process for their first time, and B, someone looking for work that you could give them some advice, because you see the same mistake happening once and again?
I have one thought on this. You should know that I'm a big fan of Ted Lasso. If you've seen the show, he's a coach. I recently realized, he carries around this picture of a pyramid, and it's like the pyramid of success. That's from this old basketball coach in the U.S. His name's Coach Wooden. And I've been listening to a lot of his work on leadership and thinking about success. And so I think one message I have to a person who, especially is more junior in their career, I guess it works for anyone in their career, but is one that I got from Coach Wooden, which is be the best you can be and focus internally. Like, think a lot about how you can present in the best way that's genuine to yourself. A lot of that means in preparations for interviews, spend more time thinking about why you're great, right? Like, what makes you special? Why are you an interesting person? And then prepare to be your best. That usually means getting a good night's rest. Frankly, letting your mind rest, both your physical body and your mind rest. And that doesn't mean don't be prepared. Know the company you're speaking with. Know about them a good deal. But I really counsel people away from cramming for interviews, trying to read an algorithms book and know all the standard questions. Don't do that. It puts undue pressure on yourself. It tends to be the average person who does that performs very poorly because they think they needed to have memorized a thing beforehand. And that's never the case. I promise you can get jobs by getting questions wrong in the right way every time. Be at your best and be confident, and then focus on humanity, right? Remember that these are actual people, and it's okay to get to know them. It's okay to share yourself, right? Be a whole person. For me, you can't see it very well, and I don't know if you're going to do only audio for this, but I have a bunch of nerdy things in my background, and I don't blur my background because if you're into 3D printing and you see that in my background, I want you to ask me about it. I want to talk about it. Or if you like video games, maybe I've got some video game posters or something like that. I'm not going to hide that. And it makes me a more qualified, more relatable professional, and not less.
Exactly. We are humans, and we value relationships and human interaction. So that I completely agree.